Welcome and good morning, or in some cases, afternoon for folks. Welcome. This is the Happy Equinox. I want to welcome people from around the world to our global meeting on the Equinox. I'm Robert McTague. I'm joined by Lena Rachel Anderson. We also have, I'm in Bucharest, Romania. She is in Copenhagen, Denmark. This is the Oceania Culture Zone, and this is the first of our 8 events that we're actually going to do throughout the day today. We're going to be joined by 2 speakers today. Our first speaker is Melissa Newton-Turner, who's joining us from Australia. We also later will have Chris Speed, also joining us from Australia. Our overall theme is what it means to be human, but today we're going to talk about relating to each other as well. Before we get started, though, I'm going to let Lena talk over some practical Zoom info and things for everybody.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you all for joining. It's 6 o'clock in the morning here in Copenhagen. It's always a great pleasure to host these and do these global meetings on Equinox. We have a little tradition that we're starting with, and if you go to the chat, you'll see a link to a Padlet. And when you click on that, you'll get to a world map, and we would like you to mark where you are participating from so that we have a map over the course of the day showing where everybody has been participating from. We'll go on for 18 hours, 2 hours or an hour and 45 minutes for each culture zone. We'll start here in Oceania, then we'll go to East Asia, Asia, and the Middle East, and we have a 2-hour break, and then we go to Africa, Europe, Latin America, and North America. And just there was a new person joining. So Robert, if you could share the link again in the chat, please go to the Padlet link and mark where you are, because over the course of the day we will create a map of the global participation. So that's a little thing that we usually start with. Practicalities regarding Zoom. I think everybody has spent so much time online now that I don't have to go into a lot of technicalities. But we have had people who we've had one person at some point who was kind of rude to a speaker, and I am the person with the mute button. So if we get into any kind of unpleasant, we do believe in freedom of speech and we're very open-minded, but if we do get into any kind of hostility, I'll just mute people and we'll see what happens. So that's the one sort of thing that I would like to say. The other thing is that if you're not one of the speakers, particularly if you have children or radio or pets or anything in the background that are noisy, please turn off your microphone if you're not on speaking, because otherwise Zoom will go to your camera. And we've had people sneezing on the screen and coughing, and it just turns up in the video. So please keep your microphone muted if you're not one of the speakers. So that's the practicalities. I also want to say a little bit more about the meeting that we have here and why we're doing this. We obviously need to have a conversation around the globe about who we are as human beings for a lot of reasons. There are technological reasons, but there are also, I mean, we're connected globally. We also have some enormous powers behind some of these technologies that we're also now using with hopefully a lot of fun and meaningful conversation. But we need to come together as a species and have conversations. So this is one part of it. We've also published a book exactly a year ago called "What It Means to Be Human." I can highly recommend it. I didn't write all of it, so I can say that. We got contributors from around the globe, and it's all about Bildung traditions from different parts of the globe. One of the writers is Yiheng Cheng, who's going to be in the next session talking about Bildung, or the Chinese concepts of education, from Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. So that's in the book. It's also going to be in the next session, and that is sort of the core of what we're doing here. We also have a theme for this session. It's relating to people, planet, past, present, and future, because, I mean, having connections is one thing that can be transactional, but if you really relate to people, there's a commitment, there's a personal connection there that's deeper than just connecting. So we need to relate to each other, and we also need to relate to our past, our local past, our shared past, to the present and to the future. So that's why we chose this topic. And to sort of tie this together and also make it more concrete, perhaps I wrote an article called IJKLMNOP. There's one letter for each of the 8 sessions that we have here. So we're trying to address in this session indigenous culture. Unfortunately, we couldn't. The indigenous speaker from New Zealand that we kind of had counted on couldn't make it after all, and so now we have 2 Australian kind of non-indigenous speakers, I think, but we will definitely be talking about what culture means to all of us, and then we'll have that kind of aspect shifting throughout the day, and we can also link to that article in the chat. So with that, I will just go to say a few words about indigenous culture, just very briefly, because we have, as a species, spent 300,000 years in the Stone Age, and around the globe there have been cultures, civilizations that lived in nature and were part of nature in a completely different way than we have been in the Western modern postmodern world, and where we have Zoom meetings and all kinds of other technologies and very big societies. And inside all of us, there's a little Stone Age person or a big Stone Age person who needs the intimacy of the tribe and the extended family and the meeting around the campfire and having a conversation about what really matters in life. And I hope that some of what we can do here is have those kind of campfire talks with each other globally around what really matters in life. Then we've had like with the Holocene climate, there's like 11,000 years, we've been able to create really big civilizations with agriculture and everything we know as big societies, empires, politics, money, trade, um, religion are products of the climate that we've had for the past 11, 12,000 years. And when we're changing the climate, it's going to affect agriculture. It's going to affect how we can survive as a species. So that's part of our shared common history and circumstance as well. Then there's a modernity that has given us technologies such as the one that we're on right now. We need to understand that and handle that well and use it wisely in the time that we're in. And then there is a postmodern era where we've been deconstructing everything and had a sort of an ironical distance to everything. And there is only individual truths. There's no shared truth. And this is where we are right now. And I hope that I mean, we can't talk away gravity. It is there. We can't talk away thermodynamics. It is there. So there is a real physical world out there with more than just personal truths. There are shared truths. And so we need to bring this together, the indigenous, the traditional, the modern, and the postmodern. And I call that polymodern. And that is also why we're here. We need to have those conversations about where we're coming from and where we are and where we would like to go. So that was those were my opening words, and I think we should let Melissa share what she wants to say about theater and education, or should Robert maybe give her a little bit more of an introduction?
We can. Lena, did we want to do a question for the
Oh,
group?
that's right. That's right. We actually have a question for you. Because we want to before we let Melissa do her presentation, I should stick with the script. So what we would like you to do, we like to get people active. I was just talking blah blah blah. We would like to get people activate people a little bit before there are more talking heads on the screen. So what we would like you to do is to go to the chat. We got a question here: what makes us relate better to other people and or the planet? Name 3 things. And yeah, Robert has also shared it here. What we'd like to do is to write it down on a piece of paper first, and not share it in the chat, because if you do, everybody will either write the same or write something else because they don't want to do the same. So please take 2 minutes, figure out what makes us relate better to other people and or the planet, name three things, but don't write them in the chat just yet. I think we're pretty much there. So Robert, you can take down the slide. So now please write your answers in the chat and let's see what comes up. All right. So we got shared story, empathy, introspection, empathy again, discipline, got being earnestly listened to, feeling that you can contribute. Love, love, love. Three good ones. And there's a love fest in the chat right now, I see. So hearts coming from everywhere.
It'll be interesting to see if that carries through the whole day or if it evolves.
Yes,
as
we
go
will.
along.
It will be
Yeah.
the love festival. It's just so what we're gonna do with the words that you're adding is that we're gonna make a word cloud, and then at the end of the session we'll have a picture of who we are here and how we want to relate back. So please share your three things in the chat if you haven't done so already, and then Robert, please, I think we should go and introduce Melissa.
Absolutely. As Lena already introduced, Melissa Newton-Turner comes to us today from Australia. She's going to talk to us. The name of her presentation is Beyond the School Gate, and it's about fostering relationships between schools and theater companies. And I'll let Melissa take away the rest.
Sorry about that. Can you see on your screens a slide that says Beyond the School Gate? Yep. Okay. All right. So I want to take you beyond the school gate this afternoon. It's afternoon for me here in Adelaide. And I want you to consider with me the value of fostering relationships between schools and theatre companies. So thank you for having me. And I'm Melissa. I'm a drama educator and consultant, and I'm also a Doctor of Education candidate at the Queensland University of Technology. So firstly, hang on. I'd like to acknowledge the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains, on whose land I come from today. Sorry, I'm just getting my technology sorted out. There we go. And I also pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are present today. So where am I taking you today? I'm looking at relationships between schools and theatre companies. And particularly, I'm looking at venue-based live theatre. And then I'm putting those relationships within the context of arts education and education in Australia more generally. And then I want to venture forward and see how we can further foster these relationships. And first of all, I want to consider why these relationships are important. And Philip Pullman, the English novelist, says, children need to go to the theatre as much as they need to run about in fresh air. The difficulty of persuading grown-up people about this is that if you deprive children of shelter and kindness and food and drink and exercise, they die visibly. Whereas if you deprive them of art and music and story and theatre, they perish on the inside and it doesn't show. So considering Pullman's work and current research on fostering relationships between schools and theatre companies, I want to look at learning more generally is a shared social responsibility from the family, the classroom and the broader community. And more specifically, development of students' cultural capital is a shared social responsibility. And cultural capital is the factual knowledge, intellectual skills and emotional intelligence that are gained through exposure to the arts. But unfortunately, not all family groups and not all broader communities can develop students' cultural capital, and often it's left to schools to do this. I'll talk about how that's possible in a bit. But these relationships complement and extend and authenticate students' arts learning, And the learning begins the moment students step outside the school gate. They build connections with their community, with their neighbourhood. And the relationships also provide theatre companies and schools opportunities to engage in meaningful arts experiences, including attending venue-based live theatre. And that's the rabbit hole I'll take you down now. So first of all, how do students relate to venue-based live theatre? So for me, venue-based live theatre connects to students' relationships with themselves and their world. And I think this is really pertinent to this discussion today. So research tells us that going to live theatre, the immediacy of live theatre, being in the live moment, provides a unique and sensory and shared experience in relationships within the audience, students with their peers, their teachers, other members of the community, and also with the artists on the stage. And the theatre requires us to suspend our disbelief. And in doing that, it takes students into a metaphoric and imaginary world. And this sensory and imaginary world gives students the freedom to experience vicariously what we have not experienced directly, Eisner says. So we get to walk in the shoes of another. This develops empathy, emotional intelligence, and intellect, and fosters imagination and an understanding of inclusivity and diversity. And already we can start seeing those words come up that came up in the chat just before. And so for me, live theatre mirrors students' own stories to develop a further understanding of and relationship with themselves. And it tells students new stories to develop a further understanding of and relationship with their world. So how do these relationships between schools and theatre companies relate to the current Australian education system? ABS in 1987 said, "We believe that the arts offer a unique way of integrating and refining human understanding, that no curriculum can be complete in which it does not have a major place." So considering that, how has Australia incorporated arts learning into our education system? So about a decade ago, launched was the National Arts Curriculum. And since then, there have been many interpretations, and various states across Australia implement it and write about it in different ways. However, it's considered compulsory to teach the arts throughout primary and part of secondary schooling, and later in secondary schooling, the arts become an elective learning area. However, in reality, the arts in Australian classrooms across primary and secondary are taught inconsistently, and part of that is due to teachers' perceived incapacity to teach quality arts education. We also have a hierarchy of subjects in our system right across the sectors, that arts are considered to lack academic and intellectual rigour and often marginalised. And students are also discouraged to study the arts due to perceived limited employment opportunities. Nevertheless, we have an enormous amount of global literature that will tell us the benefits of a student studying arts at school. And I want to look particularly at drama education because that's the world I live in. So learning in and about and through drama develops students, and you can see it on the slide, multiple, these were just grabs, there's many more, but develops students' abstract thought, their creativity, imagination, self-expression, problem-solving skills, academic skills, literacy, well-being, which is becoming a newer part of research, and even preparation for a career in the arts industry. It encourages students to build empathy, morality. Some of these are echoed in what we already know are beneficial for students to see live theatre. Challenges their core beliefs, reevaluates their understanding of themselves and their world, strengthens their community connections, cultural understandings, develops a more inclusive view of the world, be open to change. But there's one benefit that I particularly want to focus on, and that's metaxas. And metaxas, Boal says, is the state of belonging completely and simultaneously to two different autonomous worlds, the image of reality and the reality of image. And I think this is important to build students' metaxas because it creates a space for students to consider the grey areas or grey spaces in life. That is, that they can hold simultaneously two different ideas, opinions, and beliefs. And I think this is especially important at the moment, given how divisive our society is, our world is. And I think encouraging students to consider a dual state of metaxas, understanding two realities, contributes to the restoration of compassion and harmony and acceptance in our world. education in Australia at the moment? How do they relate? So our education system here in this country reflects global education trends that is driven by prescriptive teaching and learning, data collection, standardized testing, measurable learning outcomes, a narrowed scope of curriculum, which, as I said before, marginalizes the arts. And we have a secondary school system which scales subjects in order for students to enter tertiary education. And the arts, unfortunately, are not scaled well, and therefore it deters students from taking the arts, even though they may want to. The consequences, this comes from research, but it's also from my own observations as an experienced teacher, but also as a researcher. This fosters the black and white thinking and renders students fearful and incapable of the grey thinking I was talking about before with metaxas. It discourages students to choose subjects they like and are good at, including the arts. It depletes teachers' agency and pedagogy, that is, their thinking behind the thinking. And for me, students become the how of education rather than the why. And in my opinion, we create a one-dimensional school system, creating a one-dimensional society, which Robinson and Robinson call a monoculture. So where do we go from here? So Robinson and Robinson talk about an urgent and significant change required, to change the education system globally, and that will require courage and imagination and internal and external stakeholders to each play their part. But I wanted to make those changes, I want to draw on the work of Stephen Kemmis, who created the theory of practice architectures, who I'm using as part of my doctoral studies. And he talks about changing practices requires more than changing participants' knowledge about practice. It also requires changing the conditions, and he calls them the practice architectures, that make these practices possible. Only when new practice architectures or conditions at a site are in place can new practices survive. And I think this is important as we start to consider how education needs to change, that we can't just expect teachers or school principals to change their practice when there is an overarching practice architecture or conditions which impede and constrain teachers to be able to do that. And for me, the change has to come from one of Kemmis's practice architectures, which addresses value. What do we value in our society? And so that leads me to ask the question, what relationship do we want students to have with themselves and their world? And therefore, what role does education play in this process? And so for me, venturing forward, I believe that all stakeholders invested in education must recenter the student at the heart of education, value and create an education that enables students to experience the breadth and depth of possibilities, insist that this education values and is inclusive of meaningful, consistent and equitable arts education, makes purposeful connections with the world beyond the school gate to authenticate and enrich students' education, including relationships between schools and theatre companies. It is part of the bigger picture regarding rethinking contemporary education, an education that provides students with diverse, dynamic, purposeful and authentic experiences which contribute to students' development of their relationship with themselves and their world now and into the future. And finally, how am I contributing to that? Well, my Doctor of Education research looks at teachers' place in the relationships between schools and theatre companies. You'll notice I've spoken a lot about students, but I'm placing the teacher as an integral part of that relationship. And I examine how venturing beyond the school gate to venue-based live theatre influences generalist primary school teachers' drama pedagogy, which we know is really lacking. And my research also reinforces that the development of teachers' drama pedagogy is fundamental to ensuring students equitable access to quality and consistent drama education, which is inclusive of these relationships with theatre companies. And you can find me on LinkedIn to keep informed about the availability of my research. So that ends my presentation. So thank you for letting me share that with you today.
Thank you very much, Melissa. We're going to take a break. Is that correct, Lena, and go to breakouts? Because
we're gonna send people out into to breakout rooms to discuss and meet some new people from around the globe, and they're only friendly people, and so it's I can say that because you're the only ones there. So so we're gonna send you out into breakout rooms, but we're gonna keep Melissa here in the main room because otherwise she'll just keep talking. That's what speakers do, and we want the rest of you to have a chance to say something as well. And we also have 3 questions for you. Do you have them on a slide, Robert?
I do. Give me just a second. I will throw them back up there.
So, as far as I recall, the questions are, what did we just hear? What did we learn? And what would we like to ask Melissa? So,
Yes.
I will,
Actually, I don't have them on a slide yet. I'm
okay.
delinquent.
So, when you enter the breakout room, uh, just introduce yourselves quickly, and then what did we just hear? What did we learn? And what would we like to ask Melissa? And I'll give you 15 minutes, and we'll keep Melissa and Robert here and everybody else have a good time. And see you in 15 minutes. So cool stuff, Melissa. So I mean, so this is so you don't do theater. You study other people's doing theater. Or how does it work? Do you work with
So,
actors, or do you?
yeah, well, I'm a drama educator, so I work in schools, but I also am a drama education consultant to theatre companies and artists. And in that space, I create education resources to accompany performances. I go on tour with them and do workshops with schools. I contribute to advocacy documents and funding documents. I host artist forums. I do anything basically in the education space that theatre companies and artists need me to do. So hence why I'm studying what I am with my doctorate, because I'm looking at both ecologies. I'm looking at schools and theatre companies. So rather than just looking at one only, I'm really looking at how they're talking to each other.
Okay, cool.
That's been
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah. And the kids are all age groups, or?
Yeah, I teach across primary, secondary, and tertiary. So at different times, like not at the same time, but yeah, I'm trained as a secondary teacher, so as a high school teacher, but I now work in primary primarily and also work in tertiary. So yeah, I feel confident wherever you'll put me, I'll turn up and do something. So
I think everybody is back from the breakout room. So Robert?
All right, everybody, welcome back. And for those that just joined us, or just joining us in the last minute or so, or during the breakout, just a quick note that we're annotating for the group where we're from today, where we're coming from, and there's a link in the chat for a Padlet. It's a map. You go on there, and there's a little plus symbol in the lower right corner, and you click that, and you add where you're coming from, and it puts your little marker on the map, and then over the course of the day, you get to see where all the people have come from. And for those that were just in the chat, we are joined now by our second speaker of the day. His name is Chris Speed, also coming to us from Australia, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about navigating planetary pedagogies through multiple timescapes. And yes, I said that correctly. Chris.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Robert, and thank you, Elena, for inviting me. It's been a bit of a busy day. I'm aware I'm technically late. I was in a health conference. I'm just going to start my timer. So Speed family like to stick to time. And I'm going to chat, actually. So I was invited by colleagues, actually, to contribute. Oops, Daisy, I'm just trying to get you a web link. Hang on. To this, because we've just posted a paper entitled Planetary Pedagogies. Let's see, there we go. So that's the provocation. But again, I'm going to share slides and let's get going. Great. Okay. All right. I'm going to scamper through this in some ways. Much of my research has been around temporality, and I might deviate from the planetary pedagogies, but that's why the paper there, it's literally 2 or 3 weeks old. So look, we're really interested, and it's co-authored. I'm speaking for you from on the land of the Woiwurrung and Boomerang, and it's important for me to do an acknowledgement. I'm in Australia now. You can hear I'm a UK, a white settler, but I really do care about acknowledging the lands that I speak from. And as you'll see in the paper, if you get a chance to read it, it does more than just acknowledge on country, First Nations ideas, but really it also pushes against, of course, the colonial frameworks across which so many of us take for granted, the economies, but also how then they're misleading us in terms of how we care for planet. What I want to do, though, is just frame some of these bizarre Cartesian colonial frameworks. When we think about time, we, of course, through post-Fordism, connect it to concepts of money, concept of coordinates, Cartesian coordinates, and eventually back to temporalities, timetables. And I'm late because, again, I had another clash across which hours were organized and our activity are organized. These are actually... they're the early Benedictine months. They're obviously transcribed for a book, but these are the early organizational plans that we found in the UK for monks, for monasteries who already were organizing their time around hour dots. And these are 400, 500 years old. So quite extraordinary evidence that a temporal consciousness was constructed. And this is Thrift's idea that prior to your and I idea that time was manifest, represented, commodified through the clock, that natural rhythms dictate the pace in life and the content of language. And this is responding his idea that anyone in perhaps medieval or pre-modern, whatever we want to call that time, and they had any expectation of the future centers on a short lifespan and the imminence of the day of judgment. People of great temporal innocence. And if the weather's bleak tomorrow, is that because, dare I say it, one of you slept with each other? What is it that brought about this day of judgment? Because it's a threat that's introduced to us, whoops-a-daisy, from the church ultimately. Now, how do we get this temporal consciousness? Now, Nigel Thrift argues that it's a linear process of writing. The idea of writing things down creates this idea of a consciousness of time past. I don't know if you feel this, but when I look at St. Augustine's paintings of St. Augustine, the most extraordinary thing I find is the half-finished paper. I mean, look, folks, you have this very strange propensity as organic organisms to buy books with empty pages. What are you doing? What do you think's becoming? Well, I'll tell you what you're doing is you are imagining that tomorrow comes. You've transcended any temporal innocence because you believe that there will be a tomorrow. Imagine buying a book with the pages that someone said, well, you've only got a month to live. How many pages would you buy? But you don't. You buy books with empty pages because you believe we'll keep going. And that's a construct, an absolute construct, which suggests that we've moved past the day of judgment. So I'm fascinated in these pictures. Again, you can see the quill becomes an arrow of time. So again, it forms this integral part of contemporary Western society's time consciousness, time efficiency, time budgeting, time management, all belong to time conceptualization, a clock conceptualization of time. And we find Hagerstrand, the really interesting time geographer, constructing these studies, and really interesting studies. In this one, you can see actually he discovered that the woman, the mother, become disadvantaged because in the family, you can see them starting at the start of the day, way down at the bottom of the picture. As they move through the day, the father in this family doesn't do nearly as much work as the mother. So it's not necessarily bad that we monitor time, but it does create certain today's challenges to us. And again, you'll see the time geographers really went wild through the 70s, constructing the most extraordinary Cartesian frameworks for explaining that which we wonder what First Nations would think of these extraordinary Cartesian frameworks. Even to the extent that our GPS devices, all these are taxis. These are taxis in London mapped through GPS. And all of you, of course, are now mapped in various ways, sharing your data, but they're all predicated on Cartesian systems. So we wanted to I'm just going to skip this in the interest of time, is to really question what teleologies become. Because what we construct then and what we can test and explore is where this takes us. So on to a very, sorry about this. I'm going to still skip these because I don't have quite enough time. Onto a really small study that we carried out with kids. So I wanted to show, so the paper that we developed then provoked this memory around a beautiful project we pursued with children. Much of the paper relies on the idea of pluriversality, something that we're all wrestling with as an idea that we begin to think that maybe there are more ways of knowing the world, more epistemologies, more cosmologies. So we entered a school, two schools actually, one in Scotland, one in London, and we began by giving parents and teachers, as well as children, clocks. And we also gave them a really groovy little camera to take pictures. And what we simply asked them to do was take pictures of their day, but we wanted the clock in the picture. We have this idea that there's a temporal innocence still with children, that when you pass schools, primary schools, that the joy that they have is out with until that woman rings the bell. So we asked them, let's take pictures of when you're doing your most funnest thing. Can you remember to take a picture? And it was, yeah, really very, very much fun indeed. What we did then was all those photographs were developed. And you imagine 30 children, 30 adults, 10 parents, you get hundreds and hundreds of pictures. And what you're seeing here is we then developed them and we brought them back to the school, and the children then were asked to organize time or the photographs according to the time that they were taken. So what you're seeing on the very, very top is in one of the schools from 6 a.m. in the morning when the first photographs were taken all the way through to 11 o'clock at night. We began to arrange them into a collective timeline for that school, that community. Then what was really clever, a great colleague of mine, Larissa, moved it into a printer clock. Why? Well, the clock in a school is such a profound device that organizes everyone around the timetable. She was more interested in arranging and organizing around people's memories or relationship with time. So when you pull the pendulum in her clock, actually what it prints out is a time of an activity from that time of day. So that's 7 o'clock in the morning. She's pulled the cord and she begins to then generate. It doesn't matter what the school's doing. What we're doing is understanding what we do together. Everyone turned out was eating their breakfast at 7 o'clock in the morning. The next question was, if we have pluriversal times, how do we ask the children to represent them? Again, pushing against the time of the school, really. What we did then is gave them these, looks very Cartesian, but these timelines that allowed them to think about and reflect on their speed, their body's speed. All the children we work with have different ideas of working fast, working slow, being moderate, being medium. So we move these into these graphs, and what you can see they're doing there is working with tiny little robots. The robots are the tiny little circular devices, but these robots could be programmed to represent the personal idea of time. So a couple of videos then, because I think this is the beautiful bit I really wanted to get you to think about is, so after marking on a sheet how they felt about their time in a different period, the students then decorated these little time bots, which are fun. That's what we do with the students, make them theirs. But deep down, they're encoded with their representation of their feelings of time, how they feel perhaps slow amongst other children. We then bring them back into the school hall, and then we're asked to let them go. And what you'll see now, I still think, is a really beautiful pluriversality of times, how we begin to think. And I'll just wait for it to get going now. Let's jump it along a bit. So they program these bots by adding these magnetic sheets, but let's get into the collective rhythm. So these I find absolutely beguiling. Each of the bot is coded to represent their time. Some of them are still, some of them are slow, some of them are programmed to be fast, some of them begin then to represent. And what we're trying to do is ask the children to care about their own personal timelines, their idea that they don't need to correspond to a universal time, a time of the school, but actually their time and being sensitive to their own ability to account for their time is different. This is the that was the Scottish school. This is the one in London. So I'm just going to move. That's the making. I could jump forward to aware of time. But again, this is when they get played back. And again, each student really cared about how their behavior became programmed according to their representation of themselves. And you just begin to develop a culture within both schools where we value your idea of your own temporality. Of course, as soon as the exercise is done, the bell goes and they all go back to a mono time, the time of the school where they then study maths, English, history, so on and so forth. So that's all I wanted to show you. This is if you go look at planetarypedagogies.org, very easy to remember. That's where we're hosting some of these reflections now. 11 authors were involved in writing the paper. And it does speak to many ways through. My particular angle is around temporality. becoming worlds is a question again pushing against one time, but thinking of pluriversal time frames. So all I can do is encourage you, if you don't mind, have a look at the paper. It's in the chat, and yeah, see if it resonates with whatever you're thinking. So I'll stop sharing there. Bring us back slightly over time. Sorry about the Zoom glitches there, and I hope that made some sense.
It made a lot of sense, and I think it particularly made sense with also relating to the previous presentation about children and theater, and I mean, here's how we relate to time, but the theater was also how they relate to themselves, and this also ended up being about how they relate to themselves. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to send people out into the breakout rooms that you had before. Now we got the questions in the chat. What did we just hear? What did we learn? And what would be a good question to ask the speaker? And I'm going to give you 15 minutes. And in this main room, I'm going to keep the two speakers and the people who have joined during the last presentation. And then we'll have a chit chat while the old breakout groups are in the breakout rooms. Because otherwise there's going to be a lot of people who haven't heard the first presentation or this presentation either. So please join your breakout rooms, and then we'll there's like 2 or 3 people who joined while Chris was speaking, and we'll stay here. So see you in 15 minutes. So Chris, have you created this or done this research in Australia as well?
No, I've only been on country here for about a year, 15 months. So I leave much of my research. Well, the research stories are about connecting my Edinburgh time, which is, of course, right in the middle of the colonial heart of the Enlightenment. They're very, very proud of walking past Adam Smith statues, and the idea that all of these medical constructs from Dolly the sheep are all part of what we might call a representational way of knowing the world. And then landing here on country, acknowledging First Nations cosmologies, which completely contest, completely disregard the things we've created over 400 years. It's been really, it's quite a journey, sometimes quite a clash. And I really don't think I'm treading evenly in both worlds yet. But of course, hopefully the future is about learning how to tread carefully on country, and then knowing how that corresponds with a larger project around regenerative futures. So no, nice question, but it's a tricky one. Melissa, I'm curious how long you've been here, but it's coming from the UK, I tell you, it's quite a journey.
Chris, hello. I was born in Brisbane, so Queensland, and I moved to Adelaide about 7 years ago because of my husband's work. So I'm a Brisbane girl, but obviously my ancestry is English. So yeah, so I still, particularly in the drama space, there's constant conversation about how we appropriately manage Indigenous stories and how they're represented, and things are certainly improving over the last few decades. But yeah, there's a really beautiful theatre maker from Brisbane, and she talks about how the theatre has proven to be an amazing vehicle for Indigenous stories to be told, and it's their way of getting their stories out there. So it's been amazing what theatre does for Indigenous cultures here in this country. And we have an amazing theatre company. Yeah, it's precious to them, and you can see it when you rock up at theatre that tells stories about Indigenous people. You can see that that's such a valuable platform for them.
You must tell on a separate channel. You must tell me what to go and see in Melbourne if there's any companies, because I think you must be right, but I just I wouldn't know where to start. It'd be an amazing way to learn.
Yeah, Chris, if you ever see any shows by Bangarra, 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 I'll put it in the chat. They're the most amazing dance theatre company we have in this country. And if you see any of their works, your mind will be blown. And I've taken students to see their works, and it's just precious how they tell their stories, and it's a completely Indigenous company. So yeah, I would start with Bangarra. Good place to start.
Thank you so much. I'll be Googling that now. It's
I will
I
put it
need
in the
these
chat
clues.
for you now.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I would love if thank you, Melissa. I would love if you could bring some of this up during the Q&A when people return from the breakout rooms, because I
Sure.
find, I mean, this is truly fascinating.
I'll just stand up and get a
We'll
book.
see you
So if you
later
see
here in
me,
Ugo.
yeah, just
And welcome to Jan who just joined. Yeah. So what I mean, what you said about the monks, I've been writing about big history for the past 20 years, and I mean the whole linearity really begins with in the beginning God created heaven and earth.
Yeah.
So we have like at least 3,000 years of writing with a linear concept of time, and it also introduces the linearity of the individual, because I mean you're suddenly, and instead of being part of a lot of cycles in a tribe or a smaller community, you become an individual who can travel to other empires, and there you're on your own, and you have a beginning, a life, and then an end. So there's this whole concept, not just of time, but also of what it means to be human, that
Brilliant. Yeah,
that
you're
are
absolutely.
connected.
It's amazing the constructs that we have and how deep they run. I mean, they run deep into our bodies. Actually, I think with the way we get scared, we get. I mean, I get scared going past a graveyard. I mean, it's it's totally irrational, but I can
Yeah,
scare
they're
myself
dead.
with. Yeah, I know they're dead. They really are. But I get, people. We have the same old tropes, which are constructed around the same old power structures, and it's yeah, there's a way to go. There's a way to go, isn't there? But yeah, you're absolutely right. Connecting to and understanding how we're part of systems is surely part of another way of knowing.
I mean, both the circular and the linear concept of time, I mean, both are right, both are true.
Yeah, indeed, and it's okay.
Yeah, it's like it's okay, you can do that.
Yeah.
And you have to apply it in the right context, because I mean, things and people do break down and come to an end at some point. And then there's also the cycles and the circles that they're part of. So
Yeah, and there does need to be an empathy for time and temporality. There's not, this idea that just you might be suggesting that there might be one time that we need to. No, temporal empathy probably is something we're still trying to learn and develop. I wonder what it means. I've never put the words together, but of course, as family members, we develop an empathy, don't we, for people passing, people being born, and people going through hard times, tough times, coming out, and joy. But it takes unfortunately it takes a lifetime to appreciate that empathy. And of course, we've got all the startups, and the drive that you have when you're 18 to 22 is less empathetic. So really trying to find space for all of these cultures, times, it's a challenge. Let
and
alone the
also, I
more
mean,
human.
pardon?
Let alone the more than human. It's not just a human. In fact, the paper references Michel Bastien's idea of turtles being another clock, an organic clock, because they've taken on board in our lifetimes. The long-living turtles have taken on plastics. They are a clock that allows us, unfortunately, to look at our own representation of damage across environments. So she's got this beautiful text that maybe the clock as a device that lets go every night, it ignores past. A turtle is a much better way of understanding ecological damage, but also hope. But nevertheless, it's a better clock.
How
Oh
did
yeah,
the
true
kids
tracks.
react
Yes.
to clocks with hands on them? Because I mean, they're digital.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, there's a whole bunch of Ricoeur talks about the moment and the instant, doesn't he? I think the idea that the digital clock measures the instant, which is good if you're running the 100 meters, Usain Bolt, but actually the moment of the holiday isn't something which actually analog clocks are much better. There's a bit more contingency. I spoke to Terry Janker actually, Melissa. Amazing, really interesting. We're hoping to bring her in to run some run the True Tracks actually as part of a Indigenous sovereignty short course we're trying to set up. So yeah, terrific.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's got a history in the arts, and so I actually heard her speak. Terry Jenke, Robert, and Lena she is an Indigenous lawyer. She works out of Sydney, I think, and she has a history in working in the arts. And I heard her speak once a couple of years ago, and she's written this most beautiful book called True Tracks. And she very much outlines from an education perspective how schools and teachers should be communicating with elders and incorporating Indigenous, I suppose, policies or protocols to use Indigenous works in your classroom, particularly from an arts perspective. And it is just like a Bible. It's just such a good user manual. Yeah, so it's an amazing book and very useful. And I don't know how many teachers actually know about it, but they should. So.
No, it's great. Yeah, I think about. I've been here for a year, so I'm amazed that I know one of your references.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. No, she's brilliant.
So we just have had some people joining. Hello, Lena. We now have the participants out in breakout rooms to discuss what we just heard, and then we're chit-chatting with the two speakers, Melissa and Chris. And in about 4 minutes, we will have 2 minutes actually. We will have people coming back from the breakout rooms, and then we'll have the Q&A. So welcome to those who just joined. And Robert has just shared a link in the chat for a Padlet. And Lena and Jörn, if you would please, and everybody else, if you haven't done so already, click on the Padlet link. It'll take you to a global map where you can enter where you're participating from, and then over the course of the day, we'll have this amazing global map with participants showing from around the globe. It will not show a picture of you. It will not tell what you had for breakfast. It is just a pin.
Chris, I was, and I apologize because I only got about 50% of what you said because I was doing host stuff, right? I'm going to have to go back and listen. I want to know what your perspective on, I see this rising. I'm American, by the way. So, if you want to go there, you can get a counter to that counter now, narrative. I think of it as like part of this rise of the post-humans, humanists, and this tyranny of time thing. And I think it's partially driving this destruction of bureaucracy, right? It takes too much time, right? Everything is this rampage of impatience and have it now or have it yesterday. And I think these people are trying to destroy our connection with time altogether. And
yeah,
I just didn't know if any of these kinds of things are showing up in anything you're researching.
well, I still find it's a very simple gag. I hope it landed the idea that some humans buy books with nothing in them. It's the most stupidest thing. Technically, I don't think you would sell that in a digital economy. Imagine Instagram suddenly having feeds with nothing in them. So you're spinning, you're doom scrolling, and there's nothing. But of course, all the people perhaps you're referring to support digital economies in which what comes next is there must be something. And it's very, very clever, isn't it? How when you're inside an Instagram, it never stops coming. And yet what we all grew up with, and I think we still care for and we cherish with children, is let's buy a book with nothing in it. So for me, that's that dichotomy, Robert. The idea that we're working with people who want everything all the time to be filled up for us, and yet many artists, creatives strive, I don't know, Melissa, for an empty stage, for just space, just to find sanctuary or then to think. So, yeah, fascinating what the economies and the powers be are constructing around time.
So welcome back from the breakout rooms. All rooms are empty. It doesn't seem we lost anybody in cyberspace. That's a good thing. So this is a very cool group size for a conversation. So I think that we should just let people raise their hand. There's a button below where there's a heart where it says react, and then you can click raise hand, and then we'll have people give people access to ask their questions online. I think that's going to be more of a conversation thing, and we have another half hour left. So please, if let us know what you discussed and what you would like to ask the speakers. There must be something otherwise. Yeah, Vladan, please.
Yes, so good morning, everybody. So me and Dejan and Alexander had very insightful discussions that we were also able to connect to our more, let's say, post-Yugoslav experience. So I was thinking maybe that if Dejan and Alexander wants to kind of open the discussion based on all the questions that we made during the breakout rooms.
Who was somebody needs to turn on their microphone and ask a question then.
Yeah, I think Alexander had a very good summary at the end about time, and also we were discussing about society.
Yeah, what was the yes, what was the question that we discussed about how we can use the relation to time to learn about society? This was the question I think that we discussed, because in different societies there is a different perception of time. And just learning about time, how do we learn about the society based on their relation to time? Was it? Am I right, Vladan and Dan?
Yes, absolutely. So, like, for example, how we relate to cultural behaviors, to economy, to work, to personal lifestyles, and so on.
May I interfere in this? Good morning,
Please do.
everybody. Good morning, everybody. So based on the personal experience, because we were connecting the dots, because thank you very much for the presentation, first of all. And it was very interesting to see that, first of all, above the Bildung or beneath the Bildung, we started with the theater, and then we continued with the time. Which for the Bildung is very, very interesting. So two perspectives opened in my mind. First of all, the theater as a life, and then the time as a measure. So everybody of us has biological or external time, as far as I understand. So when Vladan talked about time and his experience first in Yugoslavia and then abroad in Sweden, he said it was quite interesting to see that the people in the Balkans, they when they reach certain age of 60 or whatever, then they start reading newspapers and taking care of their grandchildren. So the people in Sweden or in Japan, they would rather continue to educate themselves or to build themselves. So and that was quite an interesting insight from my perspective, because I became a grandfather recently, 17th of September 2024, beautiful daughter. I'm sorry to bother you with my personal story. And then I would very much like to get both, which means to get more Bildung, but also to have time to spend with my grandchild, which means read newspaper. And then we can come to a crucial question, well, of transmission. So now I have more, I'm more stimulated or motivated to get more education or Bildung, so I can transfer it to that small child, which means. And as a matter of fact, I only had chance, thanks to Alexander, because we're personal friends as well. He sent me a link about you, Lene, and I started watching on YouTube, and I was intrigued by the choose of the word of the choice of the word Bildung, because I do speak German, so I know what is Bildung, and Bild is as an image, and then Jesus and whatever. So I'm not going to sorry to be so long. However, it is very interesting that the theater with the time both together can be complicity. So which means they can work together, which means even though I'm a man from the Balkans and I'd like to read newspaper and with my grandchildren, maybe that's also an education for her. I don't know. So once again, we would like to ask also Chris. I don't know if we have asked that question. What were the results of those experiments with the time with the children? It was very interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Great. I mean, a few things to wind back. I think you're setting a fascinating scene in terms of identifying the multiple temporalities in your family across generations. And then, of course, I would hope that you can reconcile the relationship with your grandchildren with your own person to learn by doing it together. I mean, for example, cooking with children is a really great time-based. And then if you extend it to the garden is full of so many multiple temporalities, whether it's when the potatoes, whether the cabbages, whether the lettuces. And so it strikes me that what we did with the school children was to find a common platform, rather like a garden, rather like the kitchen, across which each of them could have their own temporal identity, but then they were able to observe multiple, if that makes sense. And of course, when we look across the landscape, literally into a garden, you see the old tree, which is 80 years old, and you see the lettuces or the tomatoes. My dad's obsessed with growing tomatoes, and they seem to just churn quickly. And then the people who enter it. So I suppose the takeaways, well, it was very qualitative. So we wrote up and we reflect on it as can design, can art, can creative practice introduce ways to help what is a monotemporal culture, the school? Can it help the children? And the psychologist who wrote about it found that the time bots individually in conversation with the children just allowed them to say, my time is okay. My time. Some of the children had ADHD, some of them have different deficit disorders in terms of attention. Some of them are super slow. Some of them get affected by diets really quickly. And sometimes they feel penalized in class because their time, you know that great phrase, stop playing, get to work. Stop playing, as though playtime is inappropriate. So what was nice with the psychologist was finding evidence that the children found their body time embodied in the bot was also a way of saying, here's my evidence. This is how my time is. I want everyone to respect that. So that's as far as we got, Dejan. But yeah, good question.
So I would like to pick up on, since I was mentioned sort of in the question, two things. One is people almost get shocked when you say stop working, go play, because we're so accustomed to it the other way around, because we want to be good people who work hard. So that's one thing. The other thing is about the theater and time, because theater is only there when in that specific time frame of the theater. You have to be there to get it. You can't, it's not a online or a television thing that you can binge whenever you want to. Watch it. You have to be there, otherwise it's gone. It's the same thing, by the way, with the global meeting on Equinox. We are recording this. You can watch the videos afterwards, but you can't participate in the conversation unless you're here. And that is a very crucial part of the global meeting on Equinox, because we need to have that conversation. So you have to be here to get the full experience. And the joy of meeting people from around the globe. Melissa, would you like to add anything to this?
Yeah, I think, and that's what I addressed sort of in what you've just picked up then, Lena, is the immediacy of theatre. And I think that's what separates theatre from any other art form, that it's not just what you see on stage, it's also how the audience is reacting and responding. That is a one-off. You will never get those people in the same room reacting in the same way at the same time. And often when I go to the theatre, particularly because I work for theatre companies that create theatre for little people, like for primary school students, one of the biggest joys I get is not actually watching the performance, it's watching the audience. And their reactions and their responses and their interactions with their teachers or their parents. And that is just a one-off. And the way that the actors then are trained to interact with the audience, it's not a pantomime sort of setup. It's still, it's very much a theatre performance. But the interactions happen because the actors know that they feed off that energy. It's a reciprocity of energy. And that happens in adult theatre, but you go into a children's theatre piece and it is just insane, the energy that is flowing between audience and performer. And that is a one-off immediate response. And that changes kids. Like that absolutely changes kids when they come out and they've just had this amazing experience. That is a one-off, is astounding, yeah, to their development.
Lena has raised her hand.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I just woke up and jumped in here to this interesting conversation. And I was thinking, and so many things are going through my head, but I would like to ask you, Chris, if you could see that young people get tired of scrolling down all those apps when you made this, as I understand, research. Because I myself feel I don't have the strength anymore to look at bullshit all the time because it doesn't give me anything. So I hope that we that are grown-ups now that you talk about here can transfer and build up things in our and the next generations, like grandchildren and children, and transfer it in a way like doing things together. I was just thinking about one thing. I saw a picture on, I guess, LinkedIn. A management team were sitting on, chairs around the room, taking notes. And I thought, this is so old-fashioned. Why don't you use creativity, curiosity, theater, doing things? Because this just writing down, I think this is going to be a what would you say, like a poster from 2025. This was what we did in 2025, and it didn't work. So did you see any signs of how the transfer made young people stop scrolling? Or is it just a circular thing that we got tired of, so to say, bullshit, emptiness?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's a continuum, which makes it very worrying. I see my daughter, I've got 2 kids, and she hasn't let go yet to find another space, place, activity to construct her idea of time identity. I don't think so. I think she's still scrolling, and it curiously, again, the same community have also got AI now. So my daughter's using ChatGPT. So writing into a blank space, even if she never used paper, there's an idea that maybe she's making notes on her phone, or she's maybe got blank space in a cloud somewhere where she's recording her thoughts. And we ask the students, if you don't write, what are you doing in lectures? Oh, don't worry, we have online cloud accounts and we write. So tomorrow still exists then. Yeah. It exists in the cloud now. But actually, the more they use ChatGPT, the less they're processing, because it writes it all for them. So I think there is crisis. I think back to what Robert was saying, we're being asked to fill every minute of every day, because advertising used to be a billboard that we walked past. And now, of course, we've decided to pick up these devices, which let them sell billboards every moment, every second. So it is challenging. Having said that, there's some good moments. We're seeing some of our students at university put them down. They're cancelling social media because it's bad for their mental health. So I think it's a continuum, and not everyone has the privilege to shut it down. Some people are truly time poor because they come from lower social economic backgrounds and they're working all the time. But I think it's a continuum, Lena, but it is really on balance, not
We
a great.
made an interesting discovery just by accident. I've had groups with mentees and mentors, like say 150 people, and suddenly the mentees from different universities start to spoke about, I'm so stressed, I feel sad, I'm depressed, I can't concentrate on my studies, and my boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. Earlier, it was more about how I'm going to make this happen, how can I be a good student and learn anything. And then I met the girl who was head of all the mentees, and we discovered that this incapacity, or what I should say, just happened when we had what do you say, social media. At that point, it shifted like this.
Yeah.
So
it is the quote. So I had a quote on screen around people of great temporal innocence. And I wonder, I grew up without, I don't know, you, Melissa, I didn't grow up with an internet.
No.
And I look back and thought I was quite time literate. But now, good grief, time innocence before being able to tell the time. And now what we have, I'm curious about Melissa, whether what happens in the moment when the children come into the stage space, because that they can't, I presume you ask them with their bodies, put it down. It just has to go.
Yeah. No audience members should have their phone on during a show, and you will hear actors, professional actors, stop in the middle of plays and glare at audience members as the light shines up on their face, because they've decided that they need to check their phone for whatever reason, and it's incredibly distracting. But certainly when students, young or secondary students, so primary school students or secondary school students, walk into a theatre space, often they'll look up or out, and often theatre companies, particularly for younger audiences, will have the stage partially lit so they can actually see the stage. So before, and this is what my research has gathered, is that before the show actually started and they were in the theatre space, there was so much discussion amongst the teachers and the students, and these were little ones, like these were sort of grade 1 and 2, so we're talking sort of 5, 6, 7-year-olds, and they were animated in their discussion about what they were seeing. And even to a point, one teacher, she talked about how she was quite concerned about taking some of her students to the theatre because of their behaviour, and what actually going to the theatre with them did for her was actually change her opinion or perception of her students because of the way they responded so positively to the theatre space. And when she got back, one of the things she did with them was ask them to just draw what happened to them when they went to the theatre. And she was showing me online these drawings of these little people, and they'd done even the backs of the seats with the numbers on the back of them. She said, I had no idea they were picking up so much detail. And these were like grade 1 students. And so she had a completely different view of who her students were. And there was another year 2 teacher, and the students were saying, oh, look at that shape on stage. And this is before the show had started. And look at the shape on stage. Isn't that like what we're studying in maths? And she's like, yes, yes. And so the energy that was coming out of these students amongst themselves and with their teacher was just invaluable. And it really changed some teachers' perceptions of what their students were capable of that they hadn't discovered in their own classrooms. So
I mean, that is somewhat the beauty of what school can do, is force open a shared time space. I mean, you might argue I was being critical of school having a mono time, the bell.
Oh, no, I agree with you.
But actually there's an attention, but what you're doing is also forcing attention for a moment away from a distributed model. So there's something arguably contradictory, but moving, when do we want to concentrate together? And Lenny said, and then when do we need to just collapse? And it's a really interesting tension, I suppose. Yeah, very, very, very eloquent. I love the idea of children drawing the back of numbers on the back of seats.
Lena, can I just respond to something you said as well about
yes, absolutely.
students? Oh no, the other Lena, sorry.
The other Lena, yes.
If I could respond to what you said about students scrolling, and yes. So I used to work in the secondary high school space, and now I work a lot in the primary school space. And part of my presentation talked about how a change in the education system has been, particularly in South Australia, that we've had a lot of prescribed learning. So now primary school teachers in our state schools, government schools, get units of work that they show on the PowerPoint, like they show on PowerPoint on screens in their classroom. And so the number of times I've now seen students sitting in front of a whiteboard and looking at the screen and the teacher just flicking through the slides. And we're talking about prep students. So we're talking about grade sort of 4-year-old, 5-year-old students, 6-year-old students. So it has become a very traditional, industrial revolution sort of style learning. And I think a lot of the learning now is happening via screens. So it's not only that students in their own personal time are using screens, but their learning is coming across in screens. And that's my big problem with the lack of arts education, because arts is about experiencing kinesthetic learning. But with the trends that are happening in our education system and how we value education at the moment, it's depleting those opportunities. And I think just reinforcing students to sit passively and watch screens to take on learning instead of actually engaging in with it. So, yeah.
So we have about 5 minutes left of this session, just to stay on time. And so if there is somebody who has not asked a question already who would like to ask one, please raise your hand. We are Robert has just shared a link in the chat for you, those of you who arrived late, which is a Padlet. If you click on that, you'll get to a world map, and you can type, there's a plus sign in the bottom right hand corner. You can type in where you are and it will put you on the global map. And then we'll have, over the course of the day, we are traveling around the globe. We will have a world map showing where people have participated from. So so that is part of our connecting, relating around the globe, is to simply show each other where we're coming from. So I would like to give the final words to Melissa and Chris before we conclude this session. There's a little bit more info. So if you have any concluding words, Melissa, what will that be?
Yeah, I think we have to prioritize how we teach our students. And it's not teaching our students content, that's part of it, but it's also teaching them how they relate to themselves and their world. And I think trends too much in education now are moving away from that and filling our students with information rather than extending their possibilities and understanding of who they are. And for me, coming from the perspective I come from, that's arts education. I feel like a lot of people wander around going, what's wrong with education? We should be doing this, this, and this. And all the time under their noses has been arts education. That fulfills a lot of those questions that people say are missing from education. And that goes back to the relationship students have with themselves and their others. I think that's imperative to our students for now and into their future.
Oh, Chris.
Oh, I did fine art myself, Melissa, so I'm very fond of the ability to support creativity as a way of asking questions about the world rather than perhaps having a reductive idea which says we must learn this model of the world in order to move forward. So probably in a similar vein, it's the need for experimentation. We've got, I don't know if in Europe have got this wonderful, well, it's quite challenging, what they call the X curve. There's two curves and my hands are literally going to swap over now. And one is to do with every practice we've got now in the current economy is beginning to face breakdown. And it's quite a dark curve down. This one is the let's experiment, because we're going to have to experiment to recover and uncover what we call regenerative methodologies, ways of revisiting what we mean by river, field, city, village, because at the moment, even travel is characterized by things such as cars, bikes, and actually mobility remains open for lots of things to take place. And there's many things that we've been talking about is how have certain constructs around the world just failing us. They're entirely failing us now. The way we think about and so I suppose it's the call for experimentation, whether that's through the creative arts. Maybe the scientists amongst us value whatever you do. I'm not a scientist, so the way that you know the world is great. But let's please experiment, because at the moment we're building research cultures, learning cultures, which is so very reductive. And actually, we've got so much evidence to say that they are increasing problems. They're exacerbating problems. They're exacerbating differentiation between all of us. They're forcing us apart. And the experimentation and collaboration, I don't know another way to solve. So let's just please start experimenting before the AIs tell us. Because the AIs only scoop up our history. They just tell us what we've ever written and throw it back to us. And crikey, if they throw back to us what we've developed over the last 200 years, well, it's not that helpful, actually, what we've got in the mirror of our own lives. We do need to experiment away from what we know.
We most certainly do. One little experiment that we started the session with was to ask people a question and to write 3 things that would help us relate better. And we've made a word cloud out of the answers. All right. So how do we, what do we need in order to relate better to each other and to the world? And I'll just let you enjoy that for a couple of moments here as I thank both Melissa and Chris for their presentations. There's something incredible happening with these sessions every time. We have speakers who may actually present in what they're going to talk about, very different topics. And then when we come together, everything sort of merges into a higher connected whole, and it's relating. So I'm very happy that we got to talk about actually children's meaning making and how we relate to the theater, to each other, and to time, and how that all ties together. So that's been amazing. Robert, if you would like to share one final time in the chat the Padlet, because we got 2 people just signing in. So if you just arrived, please go to the chat and click on the Padlet and show us where you're participating from, because then over the course of the day, we're going to make this big, nice world map showing where we got participants from. And then I am going to share the link for what we're going to do in September. There is no program yet, of course, because we do not have any speakers or anything. But in a moment, we're going to close down the Zoom room because we're recording everything. And in order for Zoom to record 8 individual sessions instead of 18 hours of video, we need to close the Zoom room entirely between sessions. So we're going to be leaving for 10 minutes where you won't get access to the Zoom room. Then we're going to come back. And when we come back, we're going to be in East Asia. Same link, but in East Asia. And while we're doing that, you can go to the Padlet, but you can also go to this link that I'm going to share with you now, where you can sign up for the event in September, and you can write us an email if you would like to become one of the organizers, if you would like to become one of the speakers, or if you would like to become an ambassador for the global meeting on Equinox. So there's a little something for you to do during the break. And Robert, did we forget anything?
I forgot to unmute. I don't think so. That was the big one, was to talk September.
So, fantastic that you all joined. This has been a pleasure. Oceania is always a joy to visit. So is East Asia, and we will see you there hopefully in 15 minutes. So go get some coffee, do whatever you need to do in the break, and see you in East Asia in 15 minutes. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.